Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this Friday morning virtual coffee. And we were just commenting before we get it started. Ali, thanks for saying good morning, and we're glad to hear it. And good morning to everybody who's out there. I have Leon Wyden with me on the call today, as well as Artie Travis. And Mike Mathias is finishing up with a QSIF presentation. As I was mentioning to people before we get started, this is my third back-to-back virtual meeting, and glad to be with everybody. And Mike will be joining us in a few minutes. If you have questions for the provost, I please ask that you send those in now through the Q&A section, because I think Mike has another commitment at 11 o'clock, and I want to give him a chance to answer or respond to any questions that may be focused on the academic side of things that you want to get a response from him. But let's get into the questions. There's a couple here already. And Leon, welcome back. Leon has been on a virtual last couple days site visit for Middle States. So glad to have him back virtually with us here. He's up in his office, but it's good to have him back on. I haven't talked with him in a couple days. First question is, when will furloughs be announced? We are not at the point where we can make those announcements yet. I'm going to share some information that I want to share with you and let you know where we are. And then maybe Leon can update anything or correct anything that I may have misstated as I go through it. We are at the point where we're trying to find $1.43 million approximately that we need to set aside to help us reduce our deficit from $7 million or $8 million, whatever it might be. I know a number of those dollars were taken care of by actions from the state system, which we appreciated. We have, and I'm going to look to Leon and shake his head yes or no on this. Did we share the document with faculty and staff leadership? Yes. Yes. Okay. So we did share it with faculty and staff leadership. The point we are right now is we are in negotiations. We're required to negotiate the plan with our bargaining units, that is AFSCME and FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police. We are in the process of, we've held at least a couple meetings, I believe, with each of those groups to talk about it. We are looking at a plan that, again, after having discussions with faculty and staff leadership during the summer, is consistent with what we did, I believe, back in 2010 as well as 2008 or 2009, which impacts all of the employees, but those at the top are experiencing a greater impact than those at the bottom. We are trying to set it so that individuals at the low end will have the proposal going forward that we have right now is approximately a little over a 1% reduction for those individuals. And at the top, among the vice presidents, it's in the order of 7%. My cut is 10%. It's graduated in between those levels. And we were hoping to implement it and start putting it, because what we want to do is try to put it across as many pay periods as we possibly can to reduce the impact on a particular pay period, so that it's not just a particular period of time. We had proposed salary reductions based on discussions with the Attorney General's office. They recommended to us that we do salary reductions. I will tell you that it sounds like from discussions with the collective bargaining units, they would like us to reconsider the furlough model. So my understanding, and I'm not part of those deliberations, but my understanding is that's sort of where we are right now. We would like to get this done. I would like to have had it done at least a week ago. I'm hoping that we get it done fairly soon. But Leon, do you want to add anything to that?
No, we continue to work with our bargaining units. We've talked with the AG's office. So the AG's office has been reviewing, our proposals to make sure that we are within the limits of the agreements and also within the limits of the statutes. So we're doing all we can, trying to wrap this thing up as quickly as we can. The longer this goes, kind of the larger the impact on the individual paycheck. So the sooner we can get it done, the better. And we're still trying to get things wrapped up with our bargaining units.
If there's questions of follow up to that, please feel free to send in the Q&A. The next question, thanks, Leon. will there be layoffs for non-tenured full-time faculty next academic year? The answer to that is I don't know. I mean, being very honest about it. We had a meeting. I had a meeting with the provost, with Mike Mathias last week. We were looking at new positions, and I think we approved 8 tenure track searches for next year, for next fiscal year. And I think the question, quite honestly, for me is to look at, and I've asked Mike to take a look at this in academic affairs, what we see in terms of teaching opportunities and teaching loads for the non-tenure full-time faculty. Clearly, the first group that, you know, if anybody's going to be impacted, are going to be the part-time faculty. The next would be the full-time non-tenure track. I don't know where we're going to be. We want to look at where we are in terms of numbers this year as well as last year to see what impacts, you know, where we're going to be as we move forward. I do know that in some of the positions, I shouldn't say I do know, I suspect in some of the positions we're advertising for this upcoming year that are tenure track positions, and we're doing national searches for all of them. Some of the non-tenure track may want to apply for those, but we don't have an answer specifically yet. I do want to move quickly on taking a look at that to give individuals as much notice as we can if we move forward. I do know from talking with Vice President Wyden, next year is going to be a very challenging year if we don't see an increase in our enrollments. We are revenue challenged. I'm working with Bill Krause regularly to look at how we're going to restructure some of the things we're doing for enrollments next year. We need to get back to at least the number we had last year of 740 new students coming in. The enrollment, if you're following anything in the Chronicle or watching things that are going on, it's a very uncertain time moving forward. I think the spring is going to be just like it's been the fall here. We hope to be operating the way we've been operating this fall in the spring. There's a lot of question about what the world will be like in the spring, given that there may be an increase in the virus again because of change in weather. But I'm hoping that next fall we can return to normal, whatever normal might have been, or how it will be viewed in the future, but certainly not the reduced work we have on campus right now. We want to get back to normal. So the question becomes one of what's going to be going on with transfer students. I hear a lot of discussion about students transferring from institutions that they're not happy with. I'm hoping our students that are here are happy with what they're having here. But I've heard from a number of faculty, there are students who are thankful for being here on campus. Again, thank you to the staff. Thank you for the faculty that are trying to accommodate our students as best as we can. It's a very different world. We need to make that work. Leon, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the budget conversation. 2022 is, as Ron indicated, it's going to be challenging. We're enrollment dependent. We'd like to get back to that 740, but we still have some issues with our state appropriations and not knowing exactly what that's going to look like next year. I mean, we received a cut last year. During our discussions with the Vice President for Administration and Finance, we've had several meetings where we've talked about what 2022's reduction might look like. Right now, it will be similar to what it was this year, but there's going to be other things that will be going on that they gave us some relief last year that they will not be able to give us the same level of relief at the system level this year. So for 2022, the challenges are going to be maybe they could be a bit more significant, at least from the state's perspective, than this year. But that can be offset if we can get back to the enrollment numbers that we had a year ago. So we need to be at the 740, 750 first-time, full-time freshmen, and we need to try to get our transfers back up to the 400 or so level. And if we can do that, then that will offset some of the fiscal reductions that we'll see from the state for next year.
Thanks, Leon. Quick couple questions that I can answer very quickly here. Will employees with precarious visa statuses be protected from furloughs by the university? The answer is yes. We've already taken that in consideration. AG's office has discussed that with us, and whatever we do will not put anybody's visa in jeopardy. Other question from Keith. Has any thought been given to allowing staff the ability to roll over more than 55 annual days? Yes, the answer is yes to that. There have been some changes made by the Board of Regents just last week, readjusting the number of days that can be carried over. I'll ask Lisa Hirsch to get an announcement out to faculty and staff on that, but that did come up and that was decided at the system level that those changes would be made. It seems information is being shared with faculty leadership, but that leadership isn't sharing the information with faculty. It was shared with both faculty and staff senates, the leadership, both with Ben Norris and with also Jay Hegeman. I will say I'll take perhaps some of the blame in that I've asked them to be careful in sharing it because we didn't want to get ahead of the union at least and have issues that we were not negotiating with them. But given that the union has that information, I will certainly let Ben and Jay know that they can share it as widely as they would like. People, please, the more important thing is people need to realize it is still in draft form. Okay, so I think the major components that we are proposing that this salary reduction, furlough, whatever it may be, and we haven't decided yet specifically how it's going to be coming forward. We do know we need $1.43 million. That we know. But how it's going to be shaped, whether it's going to be furloughs, salary reduction, or a combination of both. And quite frankly, we've gone up and back in different directions on this throughout the summer. And part of it has been the guidance that we got from faculty and staff leadership as to what they would prefer, and then guidance from the Attorney General's office, which has conflicted with what leadership was saying, has caused us to be in this limbo as to what we're actually going to do has been an issue. But there's a couple components. One is we are proposing that it impacts everybody. A couple of the other institutions have restricted it to only people over $100,000. As I have pointed out, and this question came up in testimony that I was asked to give last week. There was a hearing with a couple of the one Senate committee and one delegates committee about what we were doing with regard to this. We do not have the luxury that some other institutions have of a large salary range. Our salary range is pretty compressed. The difference between my salary and the salary of the people at the bottom end of the salary thing is just a bit over $250,000. At some of the other institutions, that range is considerably greater. And also the number of people who are over 100,000, only 11% of our faculty and staff are over $100,000. And to impact the entire $1.43 million on just those individuals over $100,000 is not feasible in terms of the percentage cuts that they would have to experience, which is why we decided, and again, this is going back to what the culture of this institution has been in the past, has been to share the burden across the entire workforce, protecting those at the lower ends as much as possible. That's what we've tried to do. And so again, I'll ask Ben and Jay in regard to this question, if you want to see this data, I don't have a problem seeing it. Just everybody understand it's still in draft form until we can get some agreements that we can work with from our two bargaining units, and then also discussing it further with the faculty and staff if there's any changes in that, how that will shape out. Keeping in mind that, again, at the end of the day, we've got to talk to the AG's office to make sure what we're doing will not put anybody's status in jeopardy. And like the question came up about visas, there's a lot of other moving parts to this that we have to make sure that we're abiding by federal law as well as state law with regard to people's status as we move forward. And it's a much more complex than one would think at the beginning. And so we're working through it. So please ask everybody patience, but again, sake of transparency, I'm glad to have Jay and Ben share that further, but I want people to understand that right now it is where we are in terms of the data. Will salary reduction make any difference to those in retiring in comparison to having furloughs? We have not yet decided on salary reduction versus furlough. We have proposed salary reductions. I will ask that question to be answered by Lisa Hirsch, who probably can better answer it, and we'll get an answer out to people on that question. What are we doing to increase enrollments for next year? We are working, Bill Kraus, and as I mentioned the last time, he's our director right now of admissions. Bill comes to us from the University of Akron. He's working through the registry. He's had a very long career in enrollment management and admissions. Having worked at the University of Akron, he's worked with a school that's a regional institution, much larger than us, brings a lot of expertise to the table with us. He is working with Alan Walker. I know we are reaching out and doing some things differently. We've already started some virtual touring of campus, but we've also been trying to find ways of doing tours on campus. We know that people coming to campus helps. Bill has also hired an assistant director for admissions, so we've staffed up what we're doing there. I had a meeting with some faculty yesterday afternoon, just an impromptu discussion in the hallways at Compton. And we're going to be doing some things of getting information out, especially to students in this region. Region being not only Maryland, but also West Virginia and Pennsylvania. I'm asking Bill for his thoughts on how we can do more of that. I know he's made some changes to the Common App, which is a vehicle for people to apply to Frostburg. And we also have, again, gone test optional for the SATs and ACTs this upcoming year, relying more on the grades that students have from high school. We also are making decisions with the information students report, not waiting for official transcripts, with the caveat that when they get the letter of acceptance, it says, you know, your admissions ultimately will be subject to confirmation of your official transcript, but we're not holding up decisions until we get those official transcripts. So I think those are some of the things. And again, I'll be glad to ask Bill to join me maybe in 2 weeks in our next coffee hour to answer some questions that you may have. That may be the best thing to help make that work. Let's see. Okay, the comment here, I think of Bill confidence in two extreme options. Reductions to top salaries only versus shared with the campus community. I'll be glad to share that information. Question came up, there's a question about, well, show us what that model would look like if you just impacted people over $100,000. Right now, I tell you our system, I think, and again, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. The top end people are having a 7% cut in pay. People at the bottom end are having a 1% cut in pay. So we will run those numbers for you and show you if we put the 1.4 million across everybody over 100,000, we'll run those numbers and be glad to show you what that might look like. Is the 2% COLA still on table for January 1, even with salary reductions? I think it is. I have not seen anything from the governor, and I see Leon shaking his head. The governor has not backed off of the 2% salary increase yet. Again, I don't know where we are on that. That's a governor's decision. And again, yes, it sounds contradictory, if those are polite words of describing it. You're asking people to take a salary reduction, and yet you're giving people a 2% salary increase. The question will be is if he does give us the salary increase in January, is he giving us the dollars to go along with it? And that's the big thing I think that the system will be pushing for if that comes about. But yes, I can understand the question. It's a very good question. I don't know. We have not gotten information yet from the governor that that 2% increase is not going to happen in January. Is that true, Leon? As far as you know? Yeah, he's confirming it. With regard to FSU, what are the main differences between salary reduction and furlough? The salary reduction would not be tied to any days off or closing of the university. We had at one point, and again, talked about closing the university for a few days in December, which would allow us to tie the salary reduction really to furlough days. That was our preference. What we got back from the AG's office is that we have to be careful if we're spreading the reduction in pay across a period of time, that we don't have furlough days to the point where it would jeopardize somebody's status as an exempt employee. At least that's my understanding of it. And so we've had discussions with the AG's office about doing a combination of furlough as well as salary reduction. Again, we'll work through it, but the basic difference is a furlough day would mean that you are not required to come to work. And those days, that's what we've done in the past. But the thing is, what we want to do is not have those furlough days impacting a particular pay period, but really spreading that out across the period of time. The impact at one point, I know we were talking, at least at the low end, it was going to be the equivalent of a $10 or $12 reduction in a person's gross pay for a particular period of pay at the low end. As we wait longer and longer and try to spread that across fewer pay periods, that number goes up. And so that's what we're trying to move as quickly as possible. The difference is, again, if we give the furlough days, the impact on the paycheck would be the same. It's just that we would have additional holiday or days off around the Christmas period beyond what we do right now. So I'm thinking we've answered all the questions to this point, or other questions people want to ask. Mike, you're on right now. Is there anything, I know you have to leave at 11. Is there anything you want to share with faculty and staff?
Sure.
Things going on in your area before we lose you.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. Yeah. So we sent out an announcement last week about our plans for the spring term. We're over the winter intersession. We'll be sticking to an all online intersession starting on January 4th, running to January 22nd. We'll be starting classes for the spring semester on January 25th and running for 15 consecutive weeks, including final exams. That will mean we wrap up about May 7th, about 10 days earlier than we were originally scheduled. You know, to mitigate the public health risks, we've decided that we're not going to have a scheduled spring break, right? The concern about students going out and coming back to campus, the risk of exposure to themselves and the risk of exposure to others in the campus community that might be connected to that kind of travel, we thought was very concerning. And so again, this plan, right, to be clear where it came from, right, we have an academic affairs planning group that consists of the executive committee members from the Faculty Senate, the executive committee members from the Academic Department Chairs Council, and the deans representing academic administrative leadership. That group made this recommendation to the president and I, and that was consistent with what we were thinking about for the upcoming term. So that's where we're at in terms of our general framework. In terms of instructional delivery, we're aiming for roughly what we're doing this semester, about 70% of our courses being offered in a blended format and the remaining 30% being offered fully online. Right, departments have been scheduling courses for the spring term and reviewing the courses that have been scheduled in pause. It looks like we're right at that ratio that we were aiming for, again, about 70-30 blended online. So preparation's well underway for the spring term, and again, thank everybody for the tremendous effort they continue to put forward in providing our students with a great academic experience this semester.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. I know we have you for a few more minutes, so if we get a question, I'll certainly throw it your way there. Question came up about, are the salary reductions and furloughs permanent? It is one time only. It's this year to get us through this year. We are working with the vice presidents to look at what the salary impacts may be next year, or excuse me, budget impacts will be next year. We're going to have some tough decisions to make in terms of if these cuts that we're experiencing are going to be permanent. And again, all indications are they will. We're hoping that, again, we can find other alternatives than reducing salaries permanently. But everything we're proposing right now is one time only. And there is a commitment from me that if we find at the end of the year our enrollments or numbers, our budgeting was off, and we actually have more money than we thought, we will readjust those. The first thing that would be reinstalled would be the salary reductions that have gone on. If we do furloughs, how will they be communicated to students so that student impression isn't that faculty staff aren't being responsive? We will put those furloughs in, the furlough days in, when it's not, when we're not in class, not in school. We'll try to work it during that December, January period of time. You know, that was part of the reason why we really did look at a furlough salary reduction model, a combination of both. At the low end, the salary reductions we're asking people at the lowest end to take is the equivalent of 3 furlough days. At the upper end, for me, it would be somewhere around 20 furlough days. And quite frankly, I don't think it would go well over in the community for the university to say, well, the president's going to take another 4 weeks of vacation. Because in fact, we've been counseled by the AG's office, if you have a furlough day and you start reading email or you come into work, it can be a violation, can be viewed as a violation of federal law. And we don't want to be in a situation where I'm taking another 4 weeks of vacation. That would not go over well. So we were talking about the idea of, you know, is there a maximum number of days of furlough, and that beyond that, what you do is you institute salary reductions. That may be where we will end up at the end of the day as we go through negotiations. But at this point, we, you know, again, the AG's office recommendation back to us early on was the cleanest way to do it is just do salary reductions. And that's what we have proposed. That's what we're working from right now. But again, this is a tough one to work through. Ali, you have a good comment here in terms of spring recruitment, sharing students, the good experience they're having being on campus and doing this fall and challenging time might be helpful. You're exactly on target with that. We are pushing out the fact that we are here, we are open. A number of institutions have gone completely online. Students are not happy with that experience. Believe me, we're pushing it out subtly, but we may do it more openly as we move forward in recruitment. That, you know, Frostburg State University is a campus that's open for business. We're here. Students are going to classes. We have a safe environment. It's a place where you can meet with your instructors either virtually or in person, which is not the case at other campuses. Again, I have to be careful of, you know, we work as a system, so I don't want, and we do compete with some of our sister institutions. It's a fine line you work in terms of competition versus cooperation, but we are looking at videos. And again, one of the questions came up, we do want to have some short videos of faculty with students talking. I've talked with our PR people and communications as well as having some discussions with the deans and academic leadership. It would be great for us to have short videos that are on YouTube with a faculty member and a student talking about what life is like in each of the different programs so that people can see them. We know that this generation of students, or at least what I'm reading, is this generation of students do not want to see slick videos that are prepared that look like commercials. They rather hear something that appears to be, you know, just off the cuff, honest responses from students and faculty about why students should look at Frostburg State University. We know we're going to have to do much more of the virtual kinds of things, and we are working toward that. And again, I think this may be where it'd be helpful to have Bill Kraus come and talk with you about that and share his thoughts. But at the same time, we are going to continue to find ways to do tours on campus. We do know we had an instance where people were not masked on campus walking on a tour, where we're going back to the Bobcat ambassadors and working with Bill's group. And I want to thank Artie Travis. I know he's been having that discussion about making sure that we do allow visitors on campus, but in the same safe environment. Artie, do you want to say anything about that, or?
No, we spoke to Bill and we spoke to the athletic director also, just to remind folks to get their folks to follow the guidelines, and we are working with Res Life and Bill Kraus to make sure that if we don't have for us to have a virtual tour of the residence halls, for us to be able to manage in a socially distanced way visit, because what we don't want to do is to turn students away when they do come to campus. But we're going to be doing it in a safe manner to make sure that all prospective students see the best of Frostburg State University.
Thanks, Artie. Question came up. This is a good one. I'm glad this came up. I want to talk about this for a minute. I'm wondering why we didn't get an email from the university about the lacrosse team. I had to learn about it from someone posting it on Facebook. Yes, our lacrosse team was asked to quarantine after a couple members of the team tested positive. That was a decision made by the health department to quarantine the men's lacrosse team. I've talked with Dr. Jeff Graham, who's heading up a lot of our communications with the health department. He, along with Katie Morale from the Brady Health Center, have been our primary contacts with the health department. That decision was made by the health department, first of all, to quarantine. And it was the first time this occurred for us. And again, we've been sensitive to the fact that we are not being responsive to FERPA. We have not been sharing information campus-wide about, in official documents, about what's happening with regard to individuals. And with regard to the team, my understanding from Dr. Graham, it took a couple days to roll out, but information was supposed to have gone to all of the instructors. But we are not putting out official notices about anything that may be happening to a particular group or subgroup, other than letting instructors know. I understand that players were asked to let their instructors know, and I don't know if that was communicated across the board. I apologize that if it hadn't happened, but Jeff said that they have now we have a strategy in place for letting instructors know if a team is being quarantined. I will tell you that we had another discussion with the health department, because the health department did not fully understand a lot of the things we were doing on campus. I think some of them, the health department was a bit surprised when we announced, when they quarantined the team, a number of the students chose to go home. And the health department thought they were staying here. And again, we cannot force people. We can't lock people up and say, you have to go here, X, Y, or Z, or go to the Quality Inn or whatever. And it was the right of the students to choose to go home. The health department was surprised by that. And now there was some concerns, and we had concerns that we were having individuals. Again, remember, quarantine does not mean that they had the virus, but they have been exposed. They may have been exposed to someone who had the virus. And as a caution, they were asked to quarantine for 14 days. We've been having further discussions with the health department. As those of you know, Jenny Corder, Dr. Corder, who joined us for the last call, has said there's an art and a science to this. The science says, here's what you do. The art is that the right decision to make in terms of what behaviors we'll see as we follow through on some things. So what's happened is, I think there's still ongoing discussions. There were discussions as of yesterday. What we do, not only when we have athletics, but let's say we have an outbreak on a particular floor in a residence hall. What actions do we take? How do we communicate those things? And is it best to quarantine, with the result that some students may decide to go home? And so they will go to other parts of the state or other parts of the country for 2 weeks rather than deciding to move to the Quality Inn. So it's not an easy decision, and I think the health department had a very good discussion with our folks yesterday. We'll see how it moves forward, and that's the art part of it. But the reason we didn't let anybody know at the point was the FERPA, but my understanding was that was supposed to have been communicated to the faculty. According to Jeff, it took a few days to get that ironed out. Hopefully we'll not have that instance if it comes up again in the future. FSU working on any plans to explore how to generate new revenue streams beyond tuition. I feel there are enough local business leaders that would be willing to donate time to figure this out to soften the blow of COVID on our budgets. One of the things we are doing is that's why Alan Walker is working with us in working with the provost's office. He's actually focusing right now on some adult learner opportunities that the College of Business has identified. We are also working with at least 3 international universities that are interested in partnering with us to offer our degrees. One of them is the one we've been working with in China, Hunan University. We are trying to renegotiate the terms there to better give us a better income flow than we're making money, it's positive, but it's being so successful that we want to see us renegotiate that to get additional dollars beyond what we've been getting already. And then we have 2 new ones that Alan is currently working with in negotiations, where we might hope as early as spring to have opportunities to do online learning, which would give us opportunities for additional money coming in. As far as the local business leaders, Jameson, I see it from you. If you have some ideas, please let me know more details of your thoughts, and I certainly will forward them to Al Dalia to help us in his contacts as well with working with local businesses. I will say that we've gotten some successes. I think you'll hear this in the State of the University address from Al, that there are companies that are locating here. We've already had one company who's hired 2 interns this week because of their connections to Frostburg State University and opportunities they see to locate offices or businesses out here in Western Maryland. Question, I'm concerned about the mental health impact on students of not having a spring break. Are there any plans to help give them some extra mental or emotional support due to the compressed semester? The answer is yes, and in fact, what we're doing is having discussions with the Student Government Association about an alternative spring semester, a spring break of some sort. That might cause us to have to expand the length of the spring semester, but we're willing to have it. What I am concerned about, and what most schools are looking at right now, we are worried that if you have a spring break, what happens is if you let the students leave, when they come back, they're going to have to be quarantined for 2 weeks, or we go completely online after spring break. And the implications of that and discussions that the faculty have had have seemed to be that they want to have 15 weeks of as much of a face-to-face environment as we possibly can. But there is fear right now that, and I share this fear, that if we have an increase in the virus over the winter because of people staying indoors more than outdoors and the virus coming back, that, and we saw this last year, you let students go away for a week and then you let them come back to campus. We need to quarantine them for 2 weeks and then test them all again before allowing the face-to-face interactions that we normally have. Now, if the world changes and we have rapid testing and we have the ability to do some things differently, we can certainly revisit that. I mean, I'm not opposed to, extending the semester another week. But again, that's a discussion I think we have to have with the faculty. And right now, I know the students are talking about coming up with ways of engaging them so that they can take a break. But I'm afraid that if we say to students, you have a week off, please stay on campus, they're not going to stay on campus. We've seen that over the Labor Day break, even though we had school on Labor Day. Some of the instances of increased of positive testing we've had has been traced back to students leaving campus over Labor Day weekend. And that's just a fact. And so, I understand the emotional mental health impact issues. We'll look for alternatives, but I really do fear, unless the faculty are willing to say, yes, let's just close the residence halls for a month afterwards. And then I will tell you right now that Vice President Leon Wyden will be knocking on my door because of the impact of closing residence halls financially had a very big impact on us in the spring semester. Everybody needs to be aware that auxiliary facilities, our meal plans, our residence housing, things that we do that are not tied to tuition do help us at the bottom line. And I'm not going to let the bottom line drive everything, but there would be serious considerations we would have to think about as far as layoffs and reductions in staff if we are not operating in a face-to-face format like we've been operating now. See the next question here. I'm concerned about the fact that we've had to learn about the quarantine of the lacrosse team from the bottom line. Is there an attempt to conceal information about positive cases from FSU community or the public? The answer is no. We are not concealing anything. Everything is being reported. We are not identifying who people are. I will say there's been some misinformation on social media that I have seen over the last several weeks, and that's not unusual in that, you know, social media is not subject to any sort of a review process. Our position is we are not going to identify any group that comes down with the virus unless we were told by the health department that it's something we should do. The health department made the decision to quarantine the lacrosse team, and we are not going to share information unless the health department says you need to let the campus know that group X, and again, the example I'm giving might be a residence hall. If there is a residence hall that has the outbreak, we will go with the guidance from the health department as to who do we inform and how do we inform the group. And they will do it based on whether or not there is a concern of health for the campus. Again, remember the quarantining of the team does not mean that the team itself has the virus. There are a couple members of the team, and again, I'm saying couple because I don't know the exact number, that tested positive. And one person on the lacrosse team tested positive, from what I'm hearing from my folks here, and yet 52 members of that team were quarantined. Okay, it's not an outbreak among the men's lacrosse team. The quarantining means they may have been exposed to it and that they needed to take that precaution. So again, we're not concealing anything in the numbers that we're getting. That information is coming out. Okay, there's a note here. Let's see, I'm going down the questions. In fact, one thing I will mention, we're doing more testing, I think, than many other institutions in the state system. I've been very pleased with that. In fact, again, question about athletics. I think there are some athletes that have been tested 5 times already in the 6 or 7 weeks we've been in school. Okay. Okay, not sure if I missed this answer yet, but are there any numbers yet from the COVID test that we had this week? We have not seen anything. I know some of the tests came back yesterday from the Monday's testing. I don't know exactly. I don't want to quote the numbers that were there. I think there was at least 1 or 2 positive cases. We tested over 32, I think approximately 3,200 people over the first 3 days of this week. I want to thank people for coming and following the protocol. What we heard from the University of Maryland, Baltimore, that provided the tests, they were quite impressed with the procedures we had. I know there was a bit of a line Monday for the 10 o'clock group. And in terms of psychology, those of you who were there at 10 o'clock Monday, and I was part of that group, we refer to you as type A people who want to hit these deadlines and you're there always early. You know, by Wednesday, I know that as well as Monday afternoon, things were moving fairly smoothly in terms of lines. So I was pleased with what we had happening, but we have not seen any of those numbers. Our plan is once we have the results from all of those this universal testing, which we will likely get sometime over the weekend. We will, in fact, put out a report next week, early next week, on what the universal testing was. And then we will go, we're going back to our surveillance testing again that we continue to do on a bi-weekly basis. So there is a group that's being asked to do testing again next week. We will again report all of those data in our bi-weekly numbers a week from Monday, or a week from Tuesday, if I'm correct, in terms of giving. So it'll be the first Tuesday of October will be our next bi-weekly testing, which will include this week's test plus next week's test. But please also know we will give another interim report next week, since people want to know about this week's testing. Again, if you test positive, the health department is informed immediately once we have confirmed the results of those tests and they come back to us. If you test negative, you may not see it in your COVID check-in for a few days, because there are several steps. There are several human steps that got to go in between getting the data from the University of Baltimore, Maryland, University of Maryland in Baltimore, from getting their data. It's screened by health professionals here. Then the data is shared with the health department, or it goes to the health department at the same time, I think, when we have a positive, and the health department follows up immediately with those individuals. If it's negative, it takes a day or two for that information to get to our IT folks, who then have to feed it in to the COVID-19 check-in app. So there is a bit of a delay, and that is common across all of these tests until we get rapid tests where we can get results in 20 or 25 minutes. We're going to be dealing with this delay because of the process. These tests that were done here were transported to Baltimore, where they're then tested in the laboratory at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, along with a bunch of other tests that they're doing. So there are delays in getting that information back. Sorry for that long-winded answer, but I want people to know we're not hiding things. It just takes a while to process. Yes, the question, Stephanie asked the question, I know in-person graduation is not going to happen this December, but will students be allowed to still walk at a future graduation? The answer is yes. I haven't figured the logistics out yet. We're going to have a number of graduations, and I think we'll probably do graduations on perhaps across a couple different weekends or whatever periods we can set up once we're allowed to be back in person. And we may designate, again, we'll open it up for discussion among the graduates. We may designate, for instance, a spring 2020 graduation, a fall 2020 graduation, but allow people who want to attend from a different graduation to attend those as well and be recognized separately. But we will have in-person graduations. We know that that's something that is very important to individuals and their families. We want to honor that. When can we expect the results from this week's COVID test? I think they will be on your check-in page, and we don't know yet when the timing will be. We will not get, I anticipate we will not get all of the results from all of these tests confirmed until probably Monday, in terms of letting people know what's going on. And I would assume that IT will be working on putting that information in. It will likely come in batches. It will not be done everybody immediately. So those on Monday will probably get the negative results sooner than the people who took tests on Wednesday. I will say that if you do test positive Monday through Wednesday, you will likely know no later than probably Sunday. And I know if you tested positive from Monday, those people have already been contacted. What about the group photo? Are those people all going to be tested? The answer is no. I was tested on Monday. Many of those were alumni. Everybody who was in the group photo that, again, none of us came in contact. We were not together for more than a minute or two. But everybody who is a university employee that was in that group photo has been tested. Is there any CARES Act dollars left for students? The answer is yes. We still have money set aside for spring to help with students living in singles. And I think there's a little bit of dollars still left, and they're still processing CARES Act requests that do come from students. We are hoping to see another influx of money. I will say that we shared discussions with the state, our federal senators and our congressmen. I've talked to Congressman Trone when he was visiting here on campus and let him know again the need for more funding to help institutions. As he pointed out, and I understood it, the Congress has already passed additional funding for colleges and universities. It's being held up in the Senate. Both Senator Cardin, actually Senator Cardin, Senator Van Hollen, as well as the senators from Virginia, from West Virginia, Capito and Manchin, and one of the senators from Pennsylvania that were on a virtual call that was set up by Al Dalia on another issue about economic development. We reiterated the importance of getting those dollars. Again, it's being held up in the Senate, and until the Senate releases it, we don't know if we'll see additional funding, but we do still have some CARES Act money available. Okay. It was stated by the health department that someone that tests positive with COVID-19 was to quarantine for 14 days. Is that still the procedure that everyone is to be taking? My understanding, and again, if it's a difference, we will let you know, but if you test positive, you are to isolate for 10 days. So if you test positive for the virus, the recommendations currently from the health department is that you isolate for 10 days. The word isolation is different than the term quarantine, although it's in essence the same thing. You're to not be in contact with other people. Our health department, if it's a student, our Brady Health Director Center meets and talks with each of those students every day during the 10-day isolation period. They are now not allowed to come back on campus, and they are told if you live off campus, you need to isolate either in your apartment, or in some instances, some students have gone home. If it's a student on campus that tests positive, they are told to isolate for 10 days. They are given the option of isolating at the Quality Inn, if they so choose, or some students have chosen to go home. They are not allowed to be back on campus for 10 days. They do not need to be tested again. CDC has said that after 10 days, after you've tested positive, you are assumed to be free of at least not being able to infect anybody after 10 days. If you come in contact with somebody and you are identified by a contact tracer, you were contacted by the health department and said you may have come in contact with someone who has had the virus, they will ask you to quarantine for 14 days. So the quarantine is 2 weeks. That is indicating that the assumption there from the health guidelines is that you may not show the virus, you may not show symptoms or be infected for anywhere for up to 2 weeks. After 14 days of quarantine, you are allowed to come back on campus. So that's my understanding of the difference between the isolation and the quarantining. Quarantine is for people who have not tested positive. Isolation is for people who did test positive. So I hope that helps. I'm learning more about this, and again, we can certainly, if it would help to have Katie Morrell, our health director, come on for a future call if that seems to be helpful. Are there discussions how we would operate without our non-tenured track full-time faculty? Many departments rely heavily on these individuals to operate each semester. Yes, those discussions are ongoing. And that's one of the things we're looking at. We're looking at loads. We do have, and again, I've seen it in some instances, the teaching load of the non-tenured track faculty are extremely high relative to some of the tenured faculty in the department. And so I've asked the deans and Mike Mathias to have discussions with department chairs about teaching loads. We're also looking at what it was like this fall. We can't just look at this fall, though. We have to also look at last year, because we were hoping that at some point we're going to come out of this unusual lifestyle that we're living with right now. But yes, there are discussions ongoing. Why are we doing baseline? Why are we doing different tests, throat swab versus nasal swab? It's the companies, the vendors we're working with. These are all what are called PCR tests. And the PCR tests, there's at least 3 versions that I know of. One is the throat swab. Another is a nasal swab that's done by a health professional, which is, I think, what the athletic department was using. And then there is the one we used this past week, provided by the University of Maryland, Baltimore, which was the self-administered nasal swab. Those are all different versions of PCR tests, and they're considered to be the gold standard. They all give very high ratings of 98% or higher in terms of accuracy. The rapid tests that we hope will be coming along soon are less expensive. The reason we have not seen many of them is they have a much higher false negative rate, which means they miss people who may have the virus, but they also have a higher false positive rate, which means they identify people who have the virus, who appear to have the virus when in fact they didn't. We suspect, and some of you may have heard in the news, Governor DeWine, when he went to see, was supposed to meet with President Trump, may have had he took a rapid test, and it may have been a false positive, because he tested positive on that test, which is a 20-minute test. And then later that afternoon, he took another more sensitive test and came up negative. We've had at least one individual who came up positive. Several days later, took the test, was negative, took another test a couple days later, was negative. We suspect that might have been a false positive. But we still isolated the individual for 10 days anyway. So these are different tests used by different vendors. We are hoping that we can get to rapid tests and again, the one that most people are talking about is a saliva test, where you would either spit on a piece of paper or swab your mouth with it, and hoping that these tests will be in the order of $5 each and give us results in 15 to 20 minutes. Again, I'm learning more about testing than I thought I would ever learn as a president, but those tests are not available yet. According to what we've heard from Dr. Bruce Gerald, president of the University of Maryland, Baltimore, UMB is hoping to have those tests available sometime in October. Again, how many will be available and whether they'll be available to the general public, we don't know yet. And part of those tests, again, some of those require a machine to test. And those tests, while the test may cost $5, the machine may be $400 and may be limited in how many tests they can do. So there's still a lot of moving parts to it. Some of you may have heard Abbott Labs has a rapid test that seems to be very accurate. The federal government bought all of them through January. So none of those are available to anybody else but the federal government. Okay. I think that's covered most of the questions that have come up. I want to thank everybody, and if this time works, we will do more of these. We'll rotate between Thursdays and Fridays as long as there's interest in answering these questions. And I hope everybody has a safe weekend. And thanks again for taking part. Thanks again for everything you're doing. Please encourage students as well as faculty and staff. Take time, relax a bit, and I know they're not easy. My new mantra is every day is a blur's day. We don't know what day of the week it is anymore, but please do the best you can and stay safe as we move forward. Thanks again and have a good weekend. Bye-bye.